Hello, everyone already here. Thanks for joining so punctually. We'll just wait about 1 minute more and then we will get cracking. So grab yourself a drink if you don't have one and we'll get started soon. Okay, guys, welcome to Pitch Network's Founder Success session for February, where we're going to be talking about MVPs, the importance of them in a startup, in gaining traction and validating what you're doing, and in getting some great market insights into your field. Firstly, thank you for joining. A bit of housekeeping. You'll notice that when you joined, your microphones and were muted and your video was off. We'd appreciate if these settings could stay like this throughout the presentation part, just because of crowd control and noise and weird and wonderful things happening on the call. But we do want you to ask questions, so please put them in the chat on the side. So if you hover over Zoom and go down to the bottom, there's a chat box, and if you click on that, it will open up the window where you can ask questions or comments as we go through. So please feel free to do that, and we'll address those as we go through, or capture them at the end. So the minimum viable product, or MVP. We all know that it's an important step in the process of validating our value proposition and achieving problem-solution fit. But how do we know what it should contain, how it should function, or what it should look like? Some of you have or are currently working with Pitch VC through our startup playbook and understand the importance of an MVP to get traction and validation. Others have built an MVP with us and are already out in the market. And others of you are coming in fresh, and that's totally cool too. This evening, we're going to cover both the strategic rationale and the technical aspects of the importance of building an MVP. And we'll first hear from Cam Walsh, Pitch Venture Capital's founder and MD, who has a wealth of personal experience in creating and launching MVPs. And he'll talk about the why and the when to build an MVP. We'll then hear from Chad Wyatt, our head of MVP and all-round no-code development guru. And he'll cover the what and the how in terms of building an MVP. We'll aim to wrap up about 6:30 this evening, so about an hour, give or take. So once again, please post any questions in the chat. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Cam.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Hope you can see me and hear me. And I really appreciate everyone joining in on this call today. As John mentioned, we're going to be talking about MVPs. We talk to hundreds of founders a year and have been doing so for 8 years now. And the top reason why products fail and therefore founders fail is that they spend so much time, money, and effort building a product that nobody wants. And the reason for this is because we have a bias to our own solutions. I do it myself. Every time I come up with an idea, I think about all the possible features of a product that could be. And I think what an amazing idea and what an amazing solution this is going to be. And I have to constantly remind myself that I know nothing, and that I need to go through a process to speak to my customers, to listen to my customers, to find out really what the best solution is. I'm going to demonstrate this in the strategy. Instead of talking you through some boring theory, I'll let you jump into the playbook and read a lot of that boring theory. We've tried to get it across in as without being so boring, but I am going to tell you a story that we do include on our online playbook that demonstrates the benefit and the mindset that you need in going to build an MVP. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite childhood movies. I don't know. I was just before this, I was reflecting on why this is one of my favorite childhood movies. It's called The Field of Dreams. I'm sure some of you have heard it. I'm not a baseball fan, but it is a great movie, maybe because it was Kevin Costner. Prince of Thieves was one of my favorite movies. Also Waterworld. And so maybe just Field of Dreams followed along with that. But basically, for those of you who don't know what Field of Dreams is, it's 1989, 5 years after I was born. In 1984, it came out. It's about an Iowa farmer who hears a voice telling him, if you build it, he will come. And so he interprets this as an instruction to build this baseball diamond in one of his fields. And after he does, one of the most famous baseball players, Shoeless Joe Jackson, and some other dead players emerge from the cornfields and they play baseball. Now, when I was started writing the online playbook a number of years ago, this, for whatever reason, this line came to me: if you build it, they will come. And that's because so many entrepreneurs believe that if they build a piece of technology, customers are going to use it. And this is not quite true. In fact, it's not true at all. There's not some magical voice up there that all of a sudden, after a product built, lots of customers are going to come and start using our product. I wish it was so, but it's not, unfortunately. Now, to further demonstrate this story, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about two types of entrepreneurs that we see come through. And I've been both of these entrepreneurs. So it's not a criticism of any one particular person, just the way that we as humans think. We're going to call them the builder and the innovator. But to make them a little bit more human, we're going to call them Sam and Sarah. And they actually look, pretty similar. They both come up with great ideas. They both have a vision of what they can achieve. They both want to lead that vision, and they both want to create a great legacy in the world. Where they do start to look different is about a year later. The first one, Sam, he's still building a product. He has no customers, and he's still working part-time as a freelancer to support his product development, and he works by himself. Sarah, on the other hand, has a growing customer base, investment, and a growing team. Now, we want to take a few steps back and think and find out how these two entrepreneurs ended up in such different places. So let's start with Sam. We'll flash back a year ago. He's in his cubicle, or these days he's working from home out of his kitchen. And for years, Sam has thought about starting a startup. He's had heaps of ideas every week. You could actually probably call him an ideas man. But he's yet to act on any of them. So he's just waiting for the right time. And believe it or not, like me, Field of Dreams is one of Sam's favorite movies. And he thinks, if you build it, they will come. So he does a few calculations, and he goes, well, if I keep my expenses in check, I'm going to have a year of runway where I can get something off the ground. I can keep working in my job, working my startup part-time, and then, a few months go by and I'll transition to my startup full-time. And so he takes the plunge, and he decides to start working in his idea. He starts putting in a little bit of cash. He starts building out his product, and he knows that if he just keeps building out this product that he's got in his mind the right way, that he will quickly be able to leave his job and have his dream come true. 6 months later, Sam starts to get a bit nervous. The product isn't anywhere near where he thought it was going to be. He keeps having these revised deadlines go out and out and out. And it's probably looking like another 6 months before he can even he can even get a customer on board. So he realizes he needs a bit of help. He hits up one of his close friends who's an accountant, and his accountant says to him, all you need is a great business plan. And so he goes away, spends a few weeks putting together this 30-page business plan meticulously. He's never actually done a business plan before, so he gets a few templates. The government has these great templates that you can fill in different things about business plans. He gets really excited when he does the financial modeling because the numbers look fucking awesome. And by year 5, it's a $1 billion company. Goes back to his accountant. He's got a great PowerPoint presentation now and a 30-page business plan. So his accountant sets him up with a bunch of meetings, and he starts pitching to these investors. Doesn't get an instant yes, though. He gets a lot of interest. They say, some of them say, sorry, Sam, you're a bit too early to us. Come back in a few months' time, which basically means we're not interested, but we're too polite to say no. And a few others say, oh, if you just had this one product or feature, then I would invest. And so, he's confident. So what he does, he goes away 2 months later, he builds those products and features, and he goes back to those same investors, and they go, oh, look, if only had a few more features and a couple more customers, I would invest, which once again is a very polite way of saying, no, I'm not interested. So let's go back and look at Sarah. She takes a little bit of a different approach. Sarah also had an idea a year ago, and she doesn't think the same way as Sam does. She's got a bit of a different mindset. She knows that investors used to value intellectual property, but the world has changed. She knows that it's way easier now to build a product. It used to be very, very expensive. You used to have to have coding skills, and the teams that were able to raise the most amount of money were going to have the most amount of success, because even if they got the product wrong, they had more money and could start again because competition wasn't as strong. But she knows that today the world is different, and that there's the barrier to entry in building product is really, really low. And so it's cheaper and easier than ever to build a product, which is why there's more and more people starting up all over the world. If any of you have been to San Francisco at any time in the last 10 months, or LA, every single Uber driver is in a startup. I think even in Melbourne now, you speak to lots and lots of people, and it's not unusual to go to a party and half the people at the party either have an idea or are working on a startup part-time. And so what Sarah realizes is that investors don't want IP so much anymore. They want traction, and traction is king or queen or both. Another word for traction is customers. And so why traction? Because traction is early evidence of a great business model. And investors don't fund solutions or problems. They fund business models that work. And so this is what Sarah focuses on. She knows that the business model is my product, not the solution. And so just like any product, you can build a business model systematically as well. And so Sarah goes about doing this. She goes about systematically building a business model. And so she spends half She spends half an afternoon scratching on the back of an envelope, making one-page business plan. And what she does is focuses on getting customers instead of building a solution. So how do you demonstrate traction without a product? Because customers don't care about solutions. Customers care about their problems. So Sarah knows that customers today are constantly bombarded with all kinds of products. And we've all seen that, right? We've all seen so many different products out there. In fact, you know, if I'm sure any of you who have an idea of the startup that you want to start, you've Googled the problem that you're trying to solve, and there's dozens and dozens of solutions out there that you can see from Googling, and even more that you can see, even more that you can't see from a Google. So the challenge today isn't building a product, but in covering the right product to build. And so Sarah builds a minimum viable product. And so what's a minimum viable product? A minimum viable product, this was a term first stated by Eric Ries. So if any of you have read The Lean Startup, you would have heard this. And he describes it as a version of a new product which allows a team to collect maximum amount of validated learning with the least amount of effort. And so Sarah decides to follow this approach. She decides to figure out a way to create the maximum amount of learning with the least amount of effort. And so instead of taking 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to build her product, she spends the next 2 to 4 weeks building out the first version of her solution. Then what she does is she continually refines her product as she begins to speak to customers. This allows her to continuously outlearn her competition and always stay a step ahead. And so within 2 to 4 weeks, she has her first customer. Within 8 weeks, she has multiple customers, and her customer base is growing. And so the difference between Sam and Sarah is not their different skill sets, but their different mindsets. Sam's a builder, Sarah is an innovator, and innovators can turn inventions into working business models. Now, this is the challenge that we're going to put to you guys today, and some of you have already taken up this challenge, is to change your mindset around what it means to build your first product. Now, since Eric Ries wrote The Lean Startup, the term MVP and minimum viable product has become mainstream. Everybody uses it. Most people use it before we say it to them, except they still are in a builder mindset, not an innovator mindset. And so when it comes to look at your MVP, it's about changing your mindset. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over back to John, and he can introduce Chad, I think, if I'm doing that correctly. Apologize if I'm not, and we'll have a Q&A later. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Cam. That was very cool. And yeah, I like to know Sam and Sally there. That was very good. Well done, Sally. Sarah. Well done, Sarah. Look, you know, it was such a good idea that Sally's coming in to attack. But yeah, thank you very much. As Cam said, pop any questions in the side and we'll address them later on. Let's move on to our next presentation, and this is from Chad. As I mentioned, Chad, head of MVP, all-round no-code tech guru. So I'll hand over to Chad. He can introduce himself and talk about the technical side of MVPs. Thanks.
Great stuff. Can you hear me okay, John?
Yes, I can.
All right, guys, thank you very much. My name is Chad, and as I've been introduced, I'm head of MVP here at Pitch. Basically, my life revolves around building minimum viable products. And that extends not only from my work, but also into my home life, as you'll find out as well. So bit of a, bit of an interesting journey I've had. I started early life really good at computers and stuff, and kind of went down a different path and became a plumber. Run my own business, fairly successful, but then decided that I didn't like it so much. So that was where I started my first MVP. And that first MVP was building apps on the side to see if it was something that I could do. So I learned a no-code product called Bubble, fairly big now. Back in 2015 when I started, it wasn't big at all. And it was right kind of at the start of the no-code movement. And then I kind of got so good at that I thought, you know what, I love this so much more than plumbing, that it seems like a good time to switch up and start doing it. So around 4 years ago, I stopped the plumbing and I moved into building apps. In that time, I worked remotely with a full-time entrepreneur named Igor Schmertzler. He had a startup in New York, and I managed to land the job there as a junior developer. And thankfully for me, he had a really, really kind of focus on learning. Every week we had to read a different book. Every week we had to come down with new iterations on the product. And it was a small team, so my skills had to grow really quickly, and they did. From there, I came across a job advert for something a little bit more local, just here in Melbourne. It was an advertisement for building out a job management system in the building industry. And of course, my development skills and my skills from being a plumber transferred fairly well. And I jumped into that and started working here. Fast forward a bit over a year, and now I'm kind of doing that and leading the team on doing that on a daily basis. I still build apps, and I still lead the team. I'm very hands-on as far as building goes, and it really is my life. So just to let you know how deep into my life MVPs go. So my daughter wanted a cubby house about a year ago. So she got a cardboard box with 4 windows cut in it. And she played with that really well for about 2 or 3 months. And then I went out and with my handy skills, I built her a cubby house out of pallets and a slide that I repurposed from Marketplace. She didn't play with it too much longer. So she didn't get the upgraded tree house. But I'm glad that I found that out before I fell out of the tree trying to build it for her. So everything that I kind of do in life, I like to do that testing, and that should be how you do your MVP as well. So what you're trying to find out when you build that MVP is it delivering unique value proposition? So the unique value proposition for my daughter is, or for me, is my daughter going to play in that cubby house and perhaps give me some free time or give me some joy watching her, and that unique value proposition was realized. So, I knew what to build her next. Apparently she got a little bit older and she didn't like cubby houses anymore. That's the way it is. Now, a minimum viable product is a really basic version of something. It could even be a prototype, which we'll cover later. But it has to do a few things. Obviously, it has to cover that unique value proposition. But it's not like the old days where you could just put anything out. It does have to be trustable. It has to not look too janky, and it has to serve the purpose, right? There's one thing that'll scare people away straight away, and that's something that is buggy before they get to, accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. Yeah, attention spans are small these days, so those things are important. So we'll go through some pretty famous and some pretty local MVPs. Obviously, Zappos Shoes. This is a pretty famous one. This was bought by Amazon, I think, for around $1 billion. I'm not sure the exact amount, but this guy came out and he's like, right, I think people will buy shoes online if they are able to send those shoes back and get another pair if they don't fit. So he went down to his local shoe shop and he said, hey, I want to buy a bunch of shoes, but I don't know which ones yet. But if they don't fit, I want to be able to return them, and I'll buy, a bunch of shoes. So he created a really simple website here. I think it was even email. So somebody would buy the shoes, he'd get the email, he'd go down the shoe shop, he'd package them up, he'd send them out to the person. And if the person didn't send them back, then that was a win. But he started this website and this idea, so this startup, without any shoes. He had no shoes. He only had the promise from somebody else who had shoes that he would be able to return them. So the cost for this guy to set this business up and to prove that unique value proposition was just simply a website that was connected to some emails. And like I said, bought out by Amazon. Now, this is one of my favorite ones. This is a local one, right? So this is one of my friends, really good buddies. He was an Indian student, came over from overseas, needed to get a part-time job. Here in Melbourne, down at Essendon Airport, he got a job as a flight school instructor, and his boss ran this flight school, and he ran it very poorly. Not a lot of customers. This stage, flight schools weren't, really doing good marketing or anything like that. And at the pub one night, he's like, "Hey, boss, you know what you should do to make your flight school more attractive?" And his boss said, "Mate, if you think you know how to run a flight school better than me, why don't you go and start one for yourself?" So the next day he went out and he bought some adverts on Groupon, and he advertised flight lessons, I think for about $120. Overnight, he got $70,000 worth of applications. From that, with no aeroplane and no flight school, he went to Queensland, he bought an aeroplane, and he flew it back, and he started his flight school. That flight school sold recently, about a year ago, actually, just before the pandemic, for over $500 million, just like that. Now, this guy pushed MVPs to the max. Groupon wanted to know whether he had, whether he had an office, and they were giving money. They were giving money to somebody who's legitimate. He literally knew what his boss wasn't going to be at the flight school, and he took Groupon through his flight school. So he really hustled to get it going, but he used what he had and the small amounts of things he did have to create a really legitimate and quite successful flight company. And the need there was for quality and accessible flight lessons. Now, before I even knew the story of this guy, I've actually been on one of these Groupon things. My wife bought it for me. And why did she buy it for me? Because one day I said, "Hey, I wouldn't mind flying a plane." And she's like, "Right, perfect, MVP. I'll buy you some tickets. You can go, you can fly the plane. And if you really like it, then you can buy more lessons," right? I really loved it, but I decided that I didn't love it enough to keep buying it. But nonetheless, he still got my $120. Now, this is a really good one, because anybody can do this. If you have some kind of product or some kind of service that you can sell on Groupon, or if you can put it on Kickstarter, you're automatically getting an audience that already exists, right? And from there, you can get feedback on your products. Now, if this guy had put his airplane lessons on and nobody had booked his airplanes, he would have lost $0. Even if 20 people booked, he would have just given the money back, and he would have moved on, and he would have thought, "Hey, that wasn't such a good idea." So using kind of, third-party kind of Groupons or Kickstarters or stuff like that to kind of get your idea and get some learning out there is a really, really great idea. And it's almost free to do. So you should think, if you do have a product, how you can work that into your own startup. Dropbox. Everybody loves Dropbox. They're not so relevant anymore, I don't think, but they were at one stage one of the only people who done cloud files. These guys sold, I think they got 70,000 people signed up, and they raised 250 million without writing a line of code. They literally had an issue with what they had, the product, what they had, or what they thought that they wanted, going out and pitching it at VCs. And VCs were like, "Man, we don't know what you're talking about. That cloud, files there." So they created a really simple video that says, "Right, you got a phone, you got a computer, you got a tablet, and right now you have to copy stuff onto a USB, put it in there, copy it onto there, put it into there, copy it onto there, or you have to try to network stuff," which at that stage just never worked. And they made this video that was so simple that people are like, "Hey, I need this. I didn't know I had that problem, but now I know I've got that problem. And I won't have to carry around these USB sticks. I won't have to worry about network." And really what that cost them was just a website and a video, which is probably like $5 on Fiverr or something like that. Now, there's a bunch of other methods the same as this that you can use to get learning and also get your idea out there. Obviously, small clickable website with a form. There's emails, even just sending out an email, a well-designed email, with, where people can reply to you or something like that to get your idea out of there. You have to obviously find an audience for that. But if you can get that information back, it's already costing you less, than perhaps you may spend if you jump down another path. Facebook pages are super good as well. And Facebook ad videos, you might not do a small clickable website now. You might actually pay for a Facebook ad, a video one. I don't know how much it costs exactly for a Facebook video ad, but you could make something just like the Dropbox ad that explains exactly what your product is and get it out there. People are guaranteed to comment. You might get some negative stuff from trolls and stuff like that, but you're probably going to get a lot of gold. And you also get people that you see interested that you could directly engage with through Messenger or something like that. What does this look like in practice? Right, let me try to move to another app for a second. Can they see that? No. Oh. Sorry guys, just give us 1 sec. Yes. All right, that's the Yum demo. We don't want that. So basically, I built this morning just as a little bit of a demo. This is obviously not high fidelity or anything like that, but this is a really good example of just a single page, something like Dropbox has done. Now, I used for this one Bubble just because I know how to use it. Probably most people might use something even simpler like WordPress, Wix, or something like that. And you're basically making a website. You're embedding a Google video, YouTube video in there, which you probably got made off Fiverr. And then on the other side, you have an Airtable form, which takes only a few minutes to set up. Jumping over to the Airtable side of this, yeah, it's coming up. There's just 2 fields here. There's the name and email. Now, probably you'll put more fields in there for your product, but this is a great way to get people to sign up and start getting users. Perhaps if you are building out a more larger MVP, you'll start getting a user list. Perhaps you can add stuff to the form that's going to relate to the unique value proposition that you want to put out there, and you can create more fields and put more stuff in your form. This is something that would be great kind of attached also to perhaps the explainer video that you have on Facebook. Obviously you have to spend some money there, but you have the video, you have a click here to find out more. It takes you to something like here, and then people can sign up. There's a ton of more complicated things than you can do than what I've done. Let's see if we get back to where we were at. Sorry guys, head of tech here. It goes slow. Oh, that's not what I want. I want the other one. Why is it not letting me? There we go. All right, so we're back. Mr. Yum. Now, Mr. Yum's a great one. They share some of the same founders as what we have here. Absolutely fantastic company, absolutely killing it here in Australia. Now they've moved over there in the UK, they're in America. If you've been to the pub lately, you've scanned that QR code in the middle of the table and you've ordered yourself a beer, you've probably used Mr. Yum. Now, their service offering now is like super cool, right? They can do batching, they save on when the cooks are doing the cooking or the people are pouring the beers. It does all sorts of fancy stuff to make sure stuff comes out on the right time, comes out together. Maybe they can cook 3 things for 3 different tables at the same time. All of that kind of stuff. But it literally started with a QR code in the middle of the table, and you scan that QR code and it bring out the menu for that particular restaurant. Now, of course, you're like, well, why wouldn't people just open a menu that they're given? Well, maybe they could do that. But there must have been something cool and something interesting about scanning that QR code. And what they were trying to do there was to see if people would actually scan and look at a menu. And if they would, there should be no reason why they wouldn't order perhaps from that menu. And I'm not sure that this is the case, but probably the next logical step would have been to have a menu that you can order from. And instead of spending a bunch of money on, particularly paying for that stuff, then they order it from there. And then at the end, the person who owns the restaurant can just tally it up and then they pay. And then from there, you might move to everything's done on the ordering system, and you start spending lots of money on integrating with existing point of sales services and stuff, which is where it's going to start getting really expensive. But to validate that idea, they had 30 cafes with a QR code in the middle of the table that they scanned. Now, with this one, I also created another little app this morning. So I'll see if I can get back to where I was. Perfect. And this app here is again using Airtable. So I have a table here. Airtable is kind of like a spreadsheet, but it integrates with absolutely everything. I've integrated Bubble with Airtable. I've connected the table to the Bubble front end. And basically what happens is, if you guys can scan that, don't know if I can zoom in, hopefully you can get that. If you guys scan that, you'll be able to see what comes up is a menu. And I'll show you a little bit about doing things that don't scale. So basically, Mr. Young signed up 30 restaurants, right? Now, they could have automated everything right down to making the QR code, dashboard where business can create their own QR code, all the rest of it. So what I've done for this one is I literally went online to a QR code generator. I put in my URL and I generated the QR code. Then I went back into Airtable here. I put that QR code into here and I needed obviously the record ID, and that QR code basically takes you to the page. Bubble looks up this table, matches the QR code to the image here that is of the menu, and all of a sudden that's displaying on your phone. Now, obviously, super simple example that I gave you. There's not really much, UI considerations or anything going in there, but you can see how you can start linking stuff together to kind of start getting answers about, what exactly about how people view your product and how people are going to use it. And, perhaps if they're interested in using it. Obviously, you don't just want to try one idea, you want to try a whole bunch. Oops. We're back. But yeah, so moving on. Love Mr. Young. So much so that I'm going back to the slide. So the illusion of apps and ideas. Now, Cam touched on this a little bit as well, right? Ideas are super easy to come up with. I sit at bed at night, so does probably all you guys. You sit in bed, you come up with ideas, then you think of what the MVP will look like, and you start thinking all night. You come up with this perfect picture of exactly what the MVP is going to look like. And then you go to build it, right? And you get a price, however much it might be, and you have to put that money down to then go use it, but then go build it. Well, if people don't like it, then you've already spent that money. And not just that, the MVP is actually, it's one of the smaller parts of your business. People think that when you build it, they will come. Well, that's not actually necessarily true, and it's probably not how you should look at it. You should think of it more as if people will pay for it, then I will build it, right? And that's what you want to do with the MVP. So always think about how you can get that learning and progress up to that larger MVP like that. Another cost, like I said, people think that the MVP is like the thing that's going to make people turn up and have a look. Nobody's going to know about it unless you know how to do marketing, unless you have a good team, unless you get good development work done, emails out there promoting your product and getting that customer feedback. So, an MVP is definitely the front-facing part of your business, but it's not everything. And you shouldn't just think that if you build it, people will come. And doing a good job on validation, it's important, and it will save you a bunch of time and money, not building the wrong thing, but building the right one. And if it's not working out for you, then maybe you need to move on. Or perhaps if you're getting like a lot of positive feedback, but in kind of a different area, don't ignore that. Don't think, hey, my idea is this, and this is the direction where I'm going, and this is what I thought about in bed, and this is the grand idea. Man, if people are loving a side part of your app, then maybe it's time to pivot in that direction and get those customers on board and see if there's opportunity there. So, use your MVP, and if it's giving you alternative learning, work with that. What you're looking to do with your MVP, obviously validate your ideas, find out if other people like it, but overall find out what the next step might be. So, back in the 80s, when you had games and stuff and you had a person, Command and Conquer is probably not a great thing, but you clicked here and you go there. The algorithm for that, as far as getting from point A to point B, is it would go down all the routes until it found one that you can go to. Now things are much smarter, but that's basically what you're doing with your MVP. You're going down, you're hitting a blockage here, a blockage there, but what you want to do is eventually find that way through. And that's by running lots of tests and doing lots of little different prototyping things. If you love what you do as well, it gives you interest and enthusiasm. You're having wins and stuff. It's a good thing, right? But you are going to have times as well from time to time where you aren't getting the wins, and you just have to either keep testing, like I said. If it's really not looking good, not persist, find a different idea, try one of the other ideas, or pivot if there's good information that's saying something different. The MVP also saves you money, as it did with my daughter's treehouse. It gets you feedback. It'll also get you following, right? So sometimes even if you don't make it on one MVP, if you're out there and if you're hustling and if you're getting people interested in what you're doing, then, if you do pivot or do something else and you've started to get that visibility, then that's going to help you with your next project or with your next idea or with your next iteration, or with your next learning. And an MVP is ultimately there to help you get investment. Your MVP is never going to be your final product. It's there to get that learning, get a VC on board, and for them to, put some investment in. So we obviously here at Pitch, we offer a whole lot of services. We invest in companies, we build MVPs for companies. We offer, different kind of, coachings and stuff like that. If you do have any questions, or if you do, want to know more information about this, we'll post a link in the chat there where you can get some more information. As far as no-code tools go, as far as like building this stuff out, so these are all things that you can leverage, right? You don't necessarily have to write any code. Bubble in itself is a little bit complicated, but there's lots of things out there you can link together, like Airtable, Notion, Coda, all these different apps that a lot of the time integrate together. And you can use them to create your MVP. You just play around, you want to get that learning. For creating websites and stuff, Wix, Webflow, Squarespace, Card, you can make websites on Bubble, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. It's more towards apps. These are all great ones to, perhaps build out them single pages, to build that landing page, to get the information out there. And, you can embed forms and all this kind of stuff through plugins. This is another one, right? E-commerce. If you've got something that you can sell, you can go out there, you can create, your own shop app or something like that, but you've got no customers. Seriously, jump on eBay, jump on Facebook Marketplace, jump on Etsy, advertise your products there and start getting feedback if people want to buy that product or not. And then go for, perhaps your own website or your own service on top of that. It costs barely anything to advertise on eBay, costs not much to do it on Etsy. You could probably put fake listings up there as well if you don't have the product yet, but you want to see how people would react to it. eBay is worth millions of dollars. They might get a little annoyed, but they're not going to lose any money over it. So also the Shopify, well immersed in the e-commerce space, really easy to use. Marketplace and communities. So Marketplacer, Circle, ShareTribe, they all, for a small cost, allow you to be able to create your own marketplaces. They take care of a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and you can kind of get on there and kind of really easily set up, kind of some simple stuff and already start getting that leverage. Another great one, right? People don't think about this, but there's a Facebook group. Start a Facebook group. Start trying to get people in the Facebook group. If the Facebook group is around what you're trying to offer as a marketplace, it's your group. You can control the terms of engagement on there. If you can get people on, and people are like really getting together and starting to, buy things from each other or whatever the interaction might be, then that's really not cost a great deal and has validated your learning, and then you can go on to creating your own platform and take them people with you, right? So bunch of resources. Obviously, Pitch Playbook. We do a playbook here. It's a bespoke product. We have a look at your startup and exactly the industry that you're in, and what success might look like for you. A lot of this information is around what it looks like in Australia. If you are from overseas, we can also tailor that program to you as well. But the Australian environment is a little bit different than overseas. You can get funding in America and Silicon Valley with far less than what you'll need to do it here. So the path is a little bit more arduous, but if you get involved in the Pitch Playbook, we'll be able to tailor that for you, give you the information that you need to make your startup a success, and which direction. We cover MVPs, we cover the category that you're in and all that kind of stuff. If you want more information on that, I set up an MVP down the bottom there. Scan that QR code, it'll take you to our website. Another great one, Alberto Savoia. He calls himself Stephen Jobino, the Italian Steve Jobs. He's a really, really cool dude. He talks all about what he calls prototyping. He actually coined the word. And it's all about, how can you test stuff? And a great example of how can you test stuff without spending much money is all companies do it. All good companies do it, even large ones. So McDonald's came out with mixed spaghetti. And they wanted to know if people would buy mixed spaghetti. So they advertised mixed spaghetti on their food boards, but they never made a single mixed spaghetti. They put it on their boards, and you could order it. But after you ordered it, they would say that they've run out. But they were able to get statistics on who would buy mixed spaghetti from McDonald's. Nobody bought any. Also, as Cam said before, we got the Lean Product Playbook by Eric Ries. That was my introduction to startups. Absolutely great book. Covers all the fundamentals. You've got the Lean Product Playbook there as well. There's a bunch of good books out there. A lot of them obviously revolve around the American scene. So there is a lot of kind of great stories out there that are fairy tale stories that it might be a little bit more hard to do it here, but they really do cover off the fundamentals, and the fundamentals do ring true no matter where you're from. So, Pitch VC, what can we help you with? Your MVP strategy. We can help you with what a good MVP might look like. We can help you with what a prototype might look like. If you're not technical, you don't want to be technical, you don't want to do no code, you don't want to do anything, you want to be the master, you want help to build your product, to build your prototypes, to do all that kind of stuff. Our MVP division here at Pitch can definitely help you with that. We can free you up to work on getting customers on board, doing your sales, doing your marketing, and we can do all the kind of heavy lifting behind the scenes. We have a bubble agency. We're predominantly bubble focused. We have a bunch of knowledge in Airtable. Our whole CRM here at Pitch actually runs on Airtable with integrations into Bubble, integrations into Stripe, integrations into Zero accounting. We really leverage no code as much as we can. Great services that connect things together as Zapier and Integromat. Zapier, super, super simple. Anybody can do it. It's basically like, I want, when something's created in Airtable, to create me something in Zero. Integromat's the same, but it's more complicated. You can set ifs and buts and kind of do some more complex workflows. And like I said, we've got the playbook there as well, which we can definitely help you with. Anybody who we invest in, pretty much everybody we invest in, they have to do the playbook first. The reason for that is we want to make sure that whoever's we're going to invest in has the knowledge they need to get through. So it really is a kind of an entry into Pitch VC. And that's about it. So you want to know more about the playbook or anything else about Pitch VC, you can scan that. We'll hook you up with John or Rosie, and they can answer any questions. Other than that, taking all questions from the floor.
Thanks for that, Chad. Yeah, super awesome stuff. And it's always, I love seeing under the hood the way that Chad's mind works. And this is very common with developers as well, being able to sort of connect dots in ways that when you're using an app and looking at it from the front end, you don't really think about. So that really cool stuff. Thanks. We've got some questions popping up on the side, but I have one from Mike, who emailed back before, a question which potentially Cam as well as Chad can jump in on. And his question was, if I have a startup with multiple different value propositions, how do I decide which of these I'm going to put first into my MVP?
It's a really good question, Mike, and thank you for that. You'd probably want to decide on your core value proposition before you get to the MVP, and there are multiple ways to do that. The way that we always start by is through detailed research. And so a number of key research things that you can do to understand which value proposition to focus on in the MVP is by understanding your customers and through customer interviews. So what that entails is you come up with 10, 15 jumping off points. You sit down with a customer who you think your value proposition or who you think your problem, who might have your problem. And you ask questions like, tell me about your biggest problem. Tell me about how you would solve this problem. Tell me about how that problem makes you feel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what you try to do is dive down into their problem, and by doing so, trying to understand what your unique value proposition might be. Now, after doing through that and through multiple other research methods, you still might have multiple value propositions that you're wanting to address. And so typically where you would start off in your MVP is the value proposition that it either has the biggest pain point or the lowest hanging fruit. And so, keeping in mind that none of this is full on science, it's part art, part science, but that's an example of how you might decide which value proposition to start with. Another example, and I'm going to answer Oliver's question at the same time in doing this. He asked, what's the difference between a prototype and an MVP? Typically, a prototype, I mean, they are interchangeable and can be the same thing, but typically a prototype isn't working fully yet. And so you can then use also a prototype to determine whether around which value proposition to get across and put that prototype in front of customers as well, which is another form of research.
Very good, thank you. That's it from my emailed questions as well, actually. So if anyone has any burning questions, please ask. Luke has one. So what are the types of questions investors would typically ask to validate an early stage product or MVP?
Cool. I can jump in and answer that one as well. So one mistake that founders often make is they focus on what we call vanity metrics. And so these are things which make a startup look good, but if you delve deeper into them, there is little substance behind it. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. App downloads is what is called a vanity metric. You could have 10,000 app downloads, but still have a very, very poor MVP. Website clicks, very poor, is a vanity metric. Not a great example of a quality product or fulfilling on a unique value proposition. And so what you want to do is understand the important metrics which demonstrates a great product. And these are engagement metrics. So they're metrics which show how much a a user is engaging with your product and the quality of engagement that a user has. For example, someone can have 10,000 downloads, but then, single digit monthly active users, because those users, aren't coming back again and again and again. So typically, before going to problem solution fit stage, what we do is we focus on 2 metrics. And Rosie, I'm going to have a complete mental blank again. I mental blanked this 2 days ago as well. But
acquisition and retention.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, thanks, Chris. It's not acquisition. It's
activation.
Activation. Sorry. So we're not focusing on Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you jumping in there. We're focusing on activation and retention. So these are key metrics that you need to understand and figure out. Now, these are the general principle metrics, and you have to understand, what does activation mean for your particular product and what does retention mean for your particular product. But if you can both figure out activation and retention and define activation and retention, they're extremely valuable and essential actually upon hit to determine whether you've hit problem solution fit stage.
Nice.
I have another question on what the costs are for building a basic marketplace MVP.
Yeah. So this is a how long is a piece of string question, obviously. So, you can get a really basic marketplace, perhaps, without transactions and that kind of stuff, and really simple dashboards. For maybe with Bubble, kind of the $15,000 mark, but generally, you're probably looking around 25 to 30 for a fully functional one. Still, fairly basic, but more advanced, if that makes sense. But then, if you're getting to the spot where you want to, integrate with other marketplaces like Shopify or any of these other ones, there's obviously a cost, for the integrations there that can drive your product up. I couldn't see too many marketplaces being built in Bubble, over probably the $100,000 mark. Although it's possible depending on what you want. But I'd say the average person pays around 25 to 30,000, I guess, for that, with a build time of around 1 to 2 months, I guess. So one of the key advantages of using no-code stuff is that it's quite quick to build stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and next to Bubble, you can also opt for something like Share Tribe. It means that it's all templated marketplaces, so it's quite easy for anyone who's non-technical to just drag and drop their own marketplace. You pay, I think, roughly around $200 per month for Share Tribe. It's just a bit limited. So if you have specific requirements for your app, or if you get above a certain user amount, the cost per month are going to quickly add up. So it could be really good to start with, but after a while you can move to something like Bubble to have a more customized MVP marketplace.
Non-for-profit. What about non-for-profit gigs?
I'm gonna jump in and answer this one, Sid. So in the startup space, I personally like the term social enterprise. In that sense, you can still make profit as a business and push that profit back into the business for growth, so that you can have more effect. But either way, what you should focus on, I talked about in my little spiel about your business model being the product, not necessarily your tech being the business model, and your tech being the product, and your tech being part of the business model. So there are 3 core parts of a business model. The first one is how you create value for a customer. The second one is how you deliver value to that customer through your tech. And the last one is how you capture that value back. And so this is core, whether you're a commercial business dedicated for making large sums of money for your own personal gain, or whether you're a non-for-profit or a social enterprise looking to make large sums of revenue to be able to help how to help more people. And so the same principles apply for your MVP, whether it's not-for-profit, social enterprise, or a for-profit business. It's about thinking about how you're going to create value, how you're going to deliver value, and then later on, how you're going to capture that value back as revenue. Now, you specifically asked about climate and sustainability companies, especially hard to grow. I wouldn't necessarily say that at this point in time. Climate and sustainability is, lots of companies are looking to capitalize on this trend. And so if you can create and deliver value, then you can grow an amazing business. And so it's about focusing on how do you create value for your customer and how do you deliver that value for that customer, and then figuring out what kind of value that is. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it'd be good to see more sustainability startups coming through. I think it's a big issue at the moment. Have we got any more from?
We have some currently, actually, in our program, focusing on trying to reduce the impact in the world. And so it's definitely something that, we are seeing some companies come through with that sort of thing.
And one in particular, Chris, NetNada, has just raised a few $100,000, off the back of the work that they've done around helping businesses determine their sustainable output. And I did a really bad job of explaining the value proposition of that startup, so I apologize to Lockie.
I think ultimately it comes down, it doesn't really matter what industry or market you are in. If you can find an angle or a way of creating value, as Ken says, that, and then able to communicate that to your customers effectively, people will perceive and gain that value and come on board, So it's just about being able to do that as cheaply and quickly as possible. And just for context, my name is Chris. I'm the head of founder success at Pitch. I was letting these guys run the show for today, but
And very timely question by Robert. Does Pitch have a service to help with initial user interviews? And so Chris there, he actually runs our Playbook process. And for those startups that are pre-MVP and are looking to understand their value proposition, that's one of the first things that we help founders with is doing initial user interviews. And Chris is an expert at helping our founders go through that process. He'll help you craft the questions, a whole bunch of resources online. He'll give you feedback on those questions and how you go about doing those interviews, because they're a core part of creating a great first MVP.
What's the percentage of Playbook participants that go through to the next level at Pitch? Cam.
Oh, that's a very difficult question. I don't have an answer exactly off the top of my head on percentage wise. All I would say is that it depends on your definition of next level, which I'm not exactly sure what that means. But if you're talking about how many people who go through the Playbook raise capital, this is a really good question. And the honest answer to this is most people don't raise capital. And the reason being, not only who go through Pitch, but also outside of Pitch as well. The reason being because it's really hard to do it. And there are so many misconceptions, and you have to work so hard, and if you have to hustle so hard, and you have to put in so many hours, that it's a really, really difficult thing to do. And that is why we exist in the first place, to be able to increase the chances, to be able to help people avoid the mistakes, and how to help people to, significantly increase their chances of raising capital. And now I'm very confident out of all the years that we've been doing a playbook that we significantly increase a person's ability to raise capital. Just this month, we've had multiple founders raise capital with their playbook. Regularly, we're helping founders talk to investors and close deals with investors. So I hope I answered that question well.
And I think adding to that as well, like at the end of the day, it's the founders who raise the money. It's not the playbook. But if you're a founder and you've gone through the playbook, then you have all the necessary tools to do it properly. If you're somebody who doesn't put in the effort and you think buying a playbook and then doing it is going to get you capital, it's not a pay for, it's not a pay for funding type of service. It's meant to upskill you, and it's meant to increase, your knowledge of the system and be able to work, harder, to get that funding. So,
cool.
So yeah.
I'm gonna jump in. Sorry, we better say something, Chad, but I apologize. I'm gonna jump in and answer Shayle's question quickly. We're very idea agnostic. We want to hear all ideas and any ideas, industry agnostic, and stage agnostic. Although the earlier the better for us is what we like to help founders avoid. Most of the mistakes as early as possible. I'll quickly ask Mandy's question as well. We don't, just being totally transparent, we don't currently offer great community connection with other founders besides the ad hoc things we do, events that we have. We are working on doing this more and more because we see a lot of value in this. So watch this space, hopefully soon. We've got plans in mind to have more community connection with other founders, but good question, Mandy. And we know how valuable this is. Sorry, Chad, jump on.
Yeah, and I believe that the MVP of the forum is being set up today. So
yeah,
there you go. Thanks, Chad.
So it's definitely coming soon.
Cool. And then Matthew, just jumping back to Matthew's question. It's a bit of a longer answer, so I'll answer that one. Matthew's asking how he's worried that he falls into the SAM category of a business mindset, and having invested a substantial amount into a prototype that isn't a fully functional MVP, does this deter investors some way? It's a really good question. I wouldn't say that it deters investors, but I would say that there's a sliding scale of ability to be able to raise capital the more traction that you have. So the more customers that you have, and you can get traction with a prototype. It's just a different way of getting traction. But the more traction that you have, the more chances you are going to be able to raise more substantial money from investors if you go about it the right way. Reduce down to no customers and just an idea. Once again, you can still raise capital off that. It's just going to be very, very hard. And the further along the journey that you can get, the quicker you can get along the journey, and the more traction you can get along that journey, which we refer to as velocity, all those few things combined, then the more likelihood you're going to raise capital. The capital is going to be more significant, and the types of investors you're going to get with in that capital raise is going to be much better as well.
And I'd just add on to that if you do sign up with us and go through the pitch playbook, part of my job is to make sure that you don't fall into that SAM category. And I would definitely say that the founders that I've worked with that have the most success, that seem to be really like gaining that traction and getting customers and building towards investment or getting investment, are the ones that stay in touch with us and like seek feedback, not just from us, but also from outside sources, and really like take every avenue they can to gain as much information and use that to demonstrate the traction of their product and their business overall. And that's the sort of stuff that really speaks to investors, because they can see the effort that you're putting in, and they can see the development of your business and the traction that you're creating. And so that's where value often comes from, and where they perceive that value a lot.
think we covered all questions now, but probably a lot to work through and think about. So if there's any more questions coming up, or if you want to set up a more in-depth call with John or with me to talk anything from building an MVP or getting traction or getting investors, use the link in the chat. We'll also follow up with an email, and we're more than happy to discuss that in more detail. But thanks. Oh, is everyone coming in?
No, just thank you.
Oh, cool. Thanks so much for joining this session. Really, really cool to see all of you here, and looking forward to see you on the next event.
So, thank you, guys. Appreciate
Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you, everyone.